Hey, today I'm going to show you some plants that are not your average garden center plants that are still really easy to take care of. So there will be no partly philodendron, there will be no Monstera deliciosa. I'm going to assume you already know that those are easy. We want to go one step up from that and just get a little bit more unique, some stuff that not everybody is going to have. I have some really cool plants here that I think are generally kind of underrated. Now, quick disclaimer, even though these plants are easy, all plants still need light. So when I say some of these plants handle low light, usually I'm talking in the like 200 to 400 foot candle range. When I say high light, I'm talking anything that gets direct sun on it. Direct light is in the thousands of foot candles. And if I say bright indirect light, that's an average of like 400 to 800 foot candles. Generally, all plants will do better, even low light ones, if you give them more light, especially in that like 400 to 800 range. So just be aware of that. If you place any of these plants in a lightless bathroom, I cannot help you. They do need light. And the second thing is, no plants like to be drowned and to be sitting in water for an extended period of time. So all of these plants, just make sure the soil dries out before you water again, and then it will be easy. So for me, an easy plant is one where, I can go on vacation. I don't have to worry that it'll be dead when I come back. It's one where if I do accidentally do an extra watering, then okay, it's usually going to forgive me. And my favorite plants also are somewhat pest resistant. There are certain plants that just seem to get pests on them all the time, no matter what I do. So if these plants are pest resistant, I will tell you that. Because trust me, I've had pretty much everything in my house. I'm going to be rating these on a scale. So the hardest of the easy plants, I'm going to call easy. The middle of the easy plants, I'm going to call very easy. And the absolute easiest, I'm going to call indestructible. So keep in mind, these are all easy, but some are going to be easier than others. So if you're absolutely a beginner, stick with the indestructible ones. If you have a little bit of experience, then you can check out some of the others. Okay, we are starting off strong with Rhipsalis. I think that Rhipsalis is a very underrated genus. Now, this one you're looking at here is Rhipsalis spicifera pink fruit. And if I hold it up, you should be able to see those beautiful pink berries, which make this plant really special. And it's been just blooming and getting these seed pods a ton this year. Like, it's just exploded. So in my opinion, all Rhipsalis are pretty easy. I'll show you another one that I love. This is Rhipsalis paradoxica. Sometimes you can get these at garden centers in Canada and Ontario. They're not super common. I think they come in very sporadically. Now, this is a slow grower, but it's a very easy grower. Again, I'll show you up close. It's got that really, really cool shape to the fronds that I think is just so interesting. So these are the two Rhipsalis that I have, and I would say that they are very similar in care. They're very tolerant to underwatering, but they're a lot more tolerant of overwatering than like a typical succulent. Now, these guys do prefer the higher end of the light spectrum, so they would definitely appreciate some direct sun, but they can survive in the bright indirect light range and still look good, whereas a typical succulent, you wouldn't be able to say that. I do think the more light you give the pink fruit one in particular, the brighter the berries will be, although I think as they get older, they tend to lose some of that color. But yeah, both of these super easy. If I show you the substrate on this one, you can actually see that it's like bone dry. This is often a plant where if my watering can is running out, it will get watered last or it'll get skipped. The only pest issues I've had with it have been root mealies. I think it has root mealies right now, actually, but I am not too hurried about dealing with it because it's honestly been growing fine and is very tolerant, even with some minor pest pressure. I've never had anything on the foliage though. So these are just two examples of Rhipsalis. I've never come across one that is more difficult. So Rhipsalis, I'm actually going to put these in Indestructible because I think they are some of the easiest plants on this list. And some of the most beautiful, honestly. Some of the most unique if you want something that's a little bit different. This is another favorite of mine. This is a fern leaf cactus. Now, I used to have a larger plant, but it did get thrips, so I decided to basically restart it. Now, these guys propagate super, super easily. The care is very similar to Rhipsalis, where they do like high light. Basically, the higher light you give them, if you want these nice wide fronds, then you have to give them some direct light, or at least bright indirect light. So that 800 to 1,000 foot candle range. But if you give them lower light than that, they will still survive. You can kind of see on this branch I propagated how skinny it is. And then now it's starting to get wider at the end because it's getting a bit more light. So they will definitely forgive you if you don't have the ideal conditions. So even though it's called a cactus, it's more of a tropical cactus. You would be watering this much more frequently than a typical cactus. I just wait until the substrate is 100% dry and then I water it again. These just have a really beautiful shape to them, the way that they cascade, the way that they spontaneously form new growth points, the way you can just cut them and propagate them in water. This one went straight from water to substrate with no issues, and they are quite resilient when it comes to pests. I did have one that got thrips. That's basically the only pest I've had issues with. Scale, I guess, too, they can get, but mealybugs seem to leave it alone, which is always a plus for me. So I'm actually gonna put this one in the Indestructible category too, because I would be very impressed if you managed to underwater or overwater this cactus. It's very, very forgiving. Now I actually have a couple anthuriums for you. I bet you didn't think that there were going to be anthuriums on this list. I will start off by saying one that is not on that list, and that is Anthurium clarinervium. I know a lot of people will say that that one is easy, but this is what I have to say to that. I think this is my third or fourth one. I've lost track at this point how many of these I have gone through. Now, granted, this one was a thrips case, so I can't be held entirely responsible for that. I've never gotten the hang of Anthurium clarinervium, so yeah, in my book, not easy. But an absolutely gorgeous anthurium that is very easy is Anthurium moodianum. Now, this is one of my absolute favorites. I know this one has had some pests. It's had thrips and scale. So try and just ignore any of the damage you see. This is such a beautiful plant. One of my favorite anthuriums. The leaves come out bright red and they fade very slowly down to a purpley black color. Now this one would have been fine except that I knocked it over and the whole leaf ripped. So that one is definitely, my fault. But yeah, this plant is just very, very, very hardy for an anthurium because it's got plasticky leaves and not the velvety leaves. It's way easier than the velvety ones. I've never had a problem growing this in room humidity. I don't really have issues with the tips browning, nothing like that. And it's a fast grower. It has had thrips, it's recovering nicely, it's even giving me a flower, and if I could just produce some babies, that would be incredible. So yeah, Anthurium moodianum, one of my absolutely favorite plants ever. In terms of light, you're looking at bright indirect light. I grow mine in a self-watering pot. And yeah, all around, just a really solid plant. I'm gonna give this one very easy because I think if you're completely new to anthuriums, you might have issues if you overwater this one. Plus the fact that it does seem to be a favorite for thrips. But as far as anthuriums go, very easy. So another anthurium that's one of my very favorites, this is Anthurium Wenlingerii. It gets these absolutely phenomenally long, dark leaves. Now, I have Anthurium pellidiflorum as well, and I have grown vitarifolium. Now, out of the three, I find that this is the easiest. I have rotted before both vitarifolium and pellidiflorum. This one so far has not given me any issues. The leaves on this, I don't know if you can see just how like stiff and rigid that is compared to a pellidiflorum leaf. These are thicker and waxier, and I think that also helps a bit with preventing browning. I think this crispiness is because this usually lives by my fireplace, which I do use in the winter. So it definitely gets a lot of like dry air on it. But even with that, I mean, it does amazing. This grew from a cutting. It's sized up beautifully. It doesn't get a ton of light. So this one can definitely tolerate the low light to bright indirect light spectrum. Yeah, overall, just a really solid plant. I have mine in a self-watering pot. It does need to be repotted. But yeah, we love it. And I think the best thing about these compared to regular anthuriums is that they don't need a ton of extra humidity. Well, they don't need any extra humidity. In my house, I am about around 50% with room humidity. So any anthurium that can thrive in that is easy in my book. I'm gonna give this one very easy as well. Very similar care to the moodianum. So if you're wondering which strap leaf anthurium to get, this is actually the one that I would personally recommend. Pellidiflorum has skinnier leaves, but I think this one is really good, really good. Now, what about hoyas? Hoyas in general are not the easiest, I'm gonna be honest. They have pretty specific requirements, or they can be quite temperamental if you don't water them at the right time. If you leave them too long without water, or if you water them too much, like they get root rot very easily. But that doesn't mean there aren't easy ones out there. And the easiest, in my opinion, is Hoya carnosa. Now, Hoya carnosa is the standard one that you're going to see at garden centers. And you know, if your grandma or if your friend has a Hoya that they've had in their house for a really long time, and it's got dark, waxy leaves, that is a carnosa. But the nice thing about carnosas is that they don't just come in the standard green form. You actually have a ton of options, and in my opinion, they're all just as easy. So this is one of my absolute favorites. Actually, I don't know if this is technically a carnosa or if it's just like a similar, like they call it like AF, which means it looks like carnosa, but it actually isn't. But it definitely behaves like a carnosa, other than getting these massive leaves sometimes. So this is Carnosa Freckles Splash. Oh, and it's getting a peduncle with more blooms on it, which is awesome. Now this Hoya is so easy and tolerant when it comes to care. It gets the most beautiful splashy leaves. It lives in 50% humidity. This is in the bright indirect light range. It could tolerate lower light, but to be happy, bright indirect light is your best shot. I keep mine in a self-watering pot, but if you don't have a self-watering pot, I'd say just wait for the substrate to dry out and then water it, or let it dry out like 90% so it's not bone dry and then water it. But honestly, even if you don't get it quite right, these are still pretty forgiving. And you have so many options with Carnosa. So this is Carnosa Freckles Splash. This is another really good one. This is Nova Ghost, which has gorgeous silvery foliage. You can see this one is growing in a pot that's like way too small for it, but you know, it's loving life. You have Argentia Princess, which is this absolutely gorgeous, basically crimson princess, but then it has a layer of silver over top. Absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. Does have a tendency to revert, but you know, that's not what we're talking about today. And then you have your nice silvery Wilbur Graves. This is the China form, and this is the Russian form. And you know what? Every single one of these plants are just as easy. Like, they look fancy, and I mean, they're beautiful. I absolutely adore these hoyas. They're so easy. They're like the easiest hoyas, and they're my favorite hoyas. So when in doubt, just stick to the Carnosa family and you have lots of options. I've never met a Carnosa that was difficult. So for Hoya Carnosa, I'm gonna say these guys are easy. I'm not gonna say they're the easiest because I do struggle with mealybugs and root mealybugs on them, and they will die if you neglect them long enough, but it does take a lot to actually get to that point. Oh, I forgot a Hoya, but it's on the shelf, and I forgot why I didn't get it down earlier. It's because it's all tangled in my window. So I'm gonna grab that and we'll talk about it. Come on. Oh no. Okay, this plant is so ridiculous. And if you see any mealybugs, just pretend you didn't. This is Hoya coriacea silver. And oh my, is that not just the most gorgeous Hoya ever? Look at the side, like look at the sides of these leaves. It's got the most beautiful silver. And when I say this is a prolific grower, I haven't even had this plant that long. Like, do you see the size of this vine? Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, this is the fastest growing Hoya I have ever kept. I'm like not even exaggerating. It's ridiculous. And you would think, because it looks so fancy and the leaves are pretty thin, that this would be, you know, more of a medium difficult Hoya, but you know what? It's like the easiest Hoya ever. It's almost easier than the Carnosas. Like, I just can't get over it, how fast and how easily it grows. Honestly, I feel like your biggest problem with this plant is going to just be keeping up with watering. I have to water this quite frequently just because of how fast it grows. It's like no matter how much I repot it, it's even in a self-watering pot, it's just so thirsty. It's growing all the time. I can't even keep up with it. And the leaves will kind of like go wrinkly when it's thirsty, but then they just bounce right back. Doesn't require super high light. Actually, the leaves tend to get like larger if it's in the lower end of the bright and direct light spectrum. So yeah, all around, this is just a like phenomenally great plant. I think if you don't have this Hoya already, this is absolutely a need. I think I'm gonna put him back here, but those vines are just something else. I cannot believe. Now, if you want a Hoya that's a little bit different, here's a fun one that I can recommend that I would not have thought would be so easy, but it actually is. It's surprisingly easy. And that is Hoya decapule. And it may not look like anything super special. I mean, I think the leaves are quite cool. But what's really cool about it is that it gets these absolutely gorgeous, unique little whisk-shaped flowers. Like, doesn't that just bring you so much joy? Like, come on, that is amazing. And you know what? This thing is flowering all the time, like all the time. I've had a Hoya multiflora before. That thing flowers a lot, but this This flowers even more. And you'd think it's like a thin leaf hoya, it's gonna be difficult. It's really not. It's a super fast grower. Again, it is thirsty. The leaves will get kind of wrinkly when they're quite thirsty, but it doesn't die. Like, it just manages to bounce back. I grow it in 50% humidity. Again, nothing special. It's on a top shelf, so occasionally it gets forgotten about. It honestly, you would think that this hoya is much more difficult than it actually is. Now, I will say propagating it, absolutely terrible. It propagates terribly. It takes twice as long as any of my other hoya propagations. It's very sensitive to drying out. So if you've ever tried propagating thin leaf hoyas, it's very much like that. Once it's established, I have no issues with it. Again, I have had root mealybugs, but all in all, pretty easy. Doesn't need a ton of light, more in the low, bright indirect light spectrum, and just blooms all the time. So if you want an easy bloomer and something unique, this would be my recommendation. See, I told you we're gonna get stuff on this list that you're not gonna get anywhere else. Okay, I'm gonna give you a few plants in the succulent family. I get it that a lot of people say, you know, succulents are not actually easy. And a lot of them aren't because they have very extreme light requirements that are not possible for most people in their homes without using like grow lights and stuff. So these are some that I think you can get away with growing in like a window and you don't necessarily need a grow light, but they do still definitely prefer the 1000 and above kind of spectrum. So what I recommend, instead of getting the more like red and blue type succulents, get yourself some haworthias. Haworthias come in all different shapes and patterns. You can even get variegated ones, and you'd think they'd be more difficult, but even the variegated ones are still quite easy. These are just 2 out of my collection. I have, you know, a lot of these haworthias, and I find them all easy, way easier than my more colorful echeverias and moonstones, those kind of succulents. These are extremely tolerant of underwatering. They will start to shrivel, like this one's actually a bit dehydrated right now, but they're not going to die. The most likely way to kill these guys is to overwater them. But even then, I find they're much more tolerant of this than some other succulents I've grown. So as long as you wait until the substrate is 100% dry, or you wait until they start to wrinkle, then you should be totally fine. Now, these guys do want as much light as you can give them. So I recommend putting them like on a windowsill, something like that. But you don't necessarily need a grow light like you do for some other succulents. And unlike some of my more colorful succulents like the echeverias, these are, I don't think I ever get mealybugs on them, which is crazy because I always get them on the others. The roots are very large and tuberous almost. So I don't get root mealybugs on these either, which make them just way easier with that alone. And even if you don't have quite enough light for these guys, they grow slowly, so you tend not to notice the etoilation, the lengthening of the space between the nodes as much with these guys as you do with some other succulents. So all around, I recommend these. Technically, you can pick these up at garden centers, but you can also get more rare and interesting varieties. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. I do think more people need to get into haworthias. Overall, I would give these very easy. I'm not gonna say they're indestructible just because of the light requirements are higher than your average plant, but still absolutely just, they're phenomenal. Now, very similar requirements for this next plant who is looking so lovely right now. This is Syningia leucotrichia. It's got these lovely white velvety leaves, and in the spring it gets these lovely orange flowers. Mine has had so many this year. It's in a lovely pot by Solarium Studio. It is a caudiciform plant, as you can see. I generally have had good success with caudiciform plants, although I have found that some are more difficult than others. Dioscorea mexicana, for example, I have unfortunately killed quite a few of those. Some caudiciform plants actually need like a lot more water than you would think that they do. But this guy is absolutely fine. And you know what? He will tell you when he's thirsty. So when these leaves start to get a bit droopy, that's when I know that it needs a drink. Now these do go dormant in the winter. So this leaf will just die back and it'll be just the caudex. And basically when it's in that state, you don't need to water it. But if you do, it's not the end of the world. I've never had an issue with rot with these guys. I've never had an issue with pests either. I have grown it in a couple different light settings. So I have grown it more in the bright indirect light area. But this year when I've gotten all the blooms has been more in like direct sun. So more than 1,000-foot candles. So because of the light requirements, I'm gonna say that this one is very easy. Not indestructible, but very, very easy for a very unique plant. Another plant with similar care requirements that is very unique. This is Staghorn madagascariense. This is a very unique plant. These are the branches. It does get teeny tiny leaves on it on the new growth, but 90% of the time, this is how it looks. Now, it does have high light requirements. In the winter, I keep it in lower light, and then in the summer, I put it outside so it gets direct sun. So this is gonna be from the bright indirect to the direct sun spectrum. If you don't give it enough light, it will not look as zigzaggy. It will kind of start to elongate, so you'll know if it's not getting enough light. But yeah, this plant is so tolerant of underwatering. You can see right now that the branches are actually kind of like shriveled up, and you'd think that they'd be dead or something, but no, they're good. They just look like that. Uh-oh, River's trying to get to my Bacchifera. He really likes the pink fruit. No, you're just not gonna do that, okay? You're just not gonna do that. Yeah, you can be here, but you're not gonna eat my plants, okay? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love you. Yeah, I love you. So don't water this one until it's 100% dry. But why I say it's so easy, so I actually have this rock in here for a reason, and that's because, well, you can actually kind of see the root system. This plant has next to no roots, like none. It's not even like solid in its pot, and yet it's actively growing, and it looks like this all the time. Like I don't even understand how it survives with so little roots. It's constantly getting knocked out of its pot just because it has like no root system. And yet it just keeps growing. Like it's an absolutely fantastic little plant. Can be propagated by branch cuttings, although it does take like a really, really long time. But with that, so what's interesting about that is I took a leaf cutting, and in my propagation bins, it's like 100% humidity. I was growing it in akadama, which I just kept moist all the time. And you know what? It did fine. So tolerant of low humidity, tolerant of high humidity. I'm gonna go ahead and say that this guy is very easy. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Some other honorable mentions, my Dioscorea elephantipes, I would say is easy. I am always a little worried that I'm going to rot it, but it generally does really, really well and is just like pretty easy care. I give it more bright indirect light and some direct sun versus direct sun all the time. And this is an Adeni, I believe, a type of desert rose. This is my first time growing these. I have it in maybe 800 to 1,000-foot candles. It has flowered for me. It doesn't seem to be too picky about watering. I do get the leaves crisping up on it, and I'm not entirely sure if that's like just how it grows or if I'm not watering it enough. So I'm gonna give this one easy overall. I haven't had this one super long, but so far it seems fairly tolerant of different conditions. So, and obviously with that big stem, it's going to be absolutely fine if you don't water it for a while. So easy for desert rose. Okay, now I have some big philodendrons. Let me start with you. Now this one, technically you can get at garden centers, but at one point it was quite rare, and I don't know how common it is currently. But I feel like I just really need to shout out this plant because for a long time it was growing in like next to no light. I think it was getting 200-foot candles or less. And the leaves did get smaller. The leaves are doing better now that I gave it a grow light. But you know what? It kind of just kept doing its thing. Like it didn't die. It just kept putting out all of these vines all over the place. It's not too picky about water. It does look kind of droopy when it gets thirsty, but as long as I water it then, it does fine. I don't have too many leaves like falling off of it. It's also been surrounded by plants with thrips and somehow hasn't gotten thrips itself. So I just feel like I need to appreciate this plant more because it kind of has just been chilling and doing its own thing, even when I have not always given it the love that it deserves. So we're gonna call this Epipremnum pinnatum. And should we call this one Indestructible? Maybe. I think even if you completely neglect this one and it dies back and all the leaves drop off, it also propagates so easily that you can very easily restart it from the vine and it grows pretty quickly. So I think you'll be back to a nice lush plant in not that much time. So yeah, let's call this one Indestructible because you know what? I think he's been through enough. I think he deserves it. Okay, here's another really, really big plant. This is Philodendron UPI. If you don't recognize it, this is really why I'm standing for this video for some of these massive philodendrons. This plant is like so carefree. It does well in low light, so it can tolerate, 200-foot candles. Even with that, it gives me these nice big leaves. This moss pole is only a recent addition. It was kind of like growing lopsided before. But you know what? It's still pretty happy. River is eating dirt. He likes the bark chips. You're gonna get some eating bark ASMR. Yeah? You having fun now? You having fun? So I feel like this is a plant that I can just forget about. Like it lives in the corner. Sometimes it doesn't get enough water. I don't know if I've ever even so much as seen it get droopy. Probably the only downside is that it does best with a moss pole, but generally the internodal spacing is pretty small. So I think it'll take a long time for it to actually get all the way up. So yeah, Philodendron UPI. Weird, but I'm gonna say that this one is River. Seriously, man? So yeah, Philodendron UPI. This is a weird one. But I'm gonna say that it is Indestructible because I've definitely also left this like sitting in water for a week and it hasn't rotted. So, credit where credit is due. Hey, can you get off of there? Are you having fun? Seriously, Maya? Seriously? Is this your idea of a good time? See what I have to deal with? Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. Okay, what if I just put this on the table and you can keep eating your dirt? Would you be okay with that? Okay, I'm just gonna put this down here, okay? And here's another plant that I am calling Indestructible, the beautiful and iconic Philodendron spiritus-sancti. Now, this grew from a relatively small TC plant when they first started coming out in TC. I just recently repotted it. It was just growing on a sort of makeshift moss pole earlier. And you know how confident I am in the easiness of this plant? I grew it for a long time in a pot with no drainage. And I've definitely left it sitting in water before, and it is fine. I think some people have had problems with this plant. Like, I don't think it has a reputation as being super easy, but in my experience, if you've ever grown Philodendron billietiae, like this is like very, very similar in care. Can tolerate low light, so 200-foot candles. Obviously, you're gonna get bigger and better leaves in the 400 to 800 range. Water whenever it dries out. But if you accidentally leave this one like sitting in water or you forget to water it for a couple weeks, it's gonna bounce back. It very rarely loses leaves from the bottom, like has leaves that go yellow. So yeah, overall, spiritus-sancti. I think the easiness of this plant is underrated. It is absolutely awesome. Like, and the size of this leaf, it's like the size of my arm. And that's like with being pretty neglected, to be honest. No humidity, no grow lights, no nothing. Like, that's pretty phenomenal in my opinion. So my take, we need to not forget about spiritus-sancti, especially now that you can actually get them and they're affordable. I think I'm gonna do one last honorable mention in the easy category, and that is for platyceriums or staghorn ferns. I think this is some version of Willinkii. Is it Willinkii? I can never remember. Anyways, there are a few staghorn ferns that I think are a bit more challenging, like Ridley or what's another difficult one? I think Madagascarens, the one with the like waffle texture leaves. That one is quite challenging, but I'd say most that have these nice thick fronds are like way easier than you would expect them to be. I grow mine in like 50% humidity. I just make sure that give them a soak once the sphagnum moss dries out. But you know what? Even without a ton of light, like they grow behind me on the like mount thingy, which really only gets artificial light. And some of them are quite far away from the light. It kind of depends how they're placed for the week, but I'd say it's definitely the like 400 to 800 foot candle range. And they still do really good. Like they look amazing. They can tolerate higher light. They're just very, in my experience, easygoing and tolerant of different conditions. Even if you let the substrate, here, River, do you want to go eat some dirt? Here, you can eat the dirt. Come here. Come on. Hey, step up. Step up. Come on. Step up. Come on, step up. Don't be a twerp. Come on, step up. Come on. Ow. There, eat your dirt. Even if you accidentally leave the moss too long and it gets like completely 100% dry, they still bounce back and seem just like to be fine. So super, super fun to grow. I think having to water them like more frequently and having to mount them maybe makes them like one step up. But I definitely think these guys are easy, and the majority of the platyceriums that I have experienced have been just as easy as this one. Hey, that's mine. Don't you think you can be eating that? Look, he's eating one of the pink fruits. He's done this before. Clearly they're not poisonous. You're actually eating it? Does that taste good? Oh my goodness, River. That's why I put bitter spray on it. Did you get some bitter? Is that why you dropped it? You're such a twerp, honestly. Anyways, platycerium, easy, and bonus, super cool and unique. So that is it. I'm sure there are more easy, unique plants, but these are kind of some of my favorites, the ones that I would recommend in a heartbeat. Please let me know your experience with these plants if you find any like more challenging than I said, or if you have your own unique plants to add to this list. I'd love to hear it, because you know, at the end of the day, having a plant you just don't have to worry about is awesome. Sometimes I'm up for a challenge. Like sometimes a plant is beautiful enough that, you know, I'll work with it even if it is difficult. But if you have a plant that's beautiful and easy, like you just can't beat that. Anyways, thank you very much for watching today and for supporting me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If I have any soil left in my pots, that is. Yeah, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you.